So, you've heard that they've nerfed Divine Smite. Is it still viable? Can we still build around it? Here's an idea. What if we built around both smites, Divine and Eldritch? Could we, in that scenario, blow stuff up like we used to be able to in 2014? Well, stay tuned to find out. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, I like to build characters for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also love creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you just like theorycrafting, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thanks for watching. My name's Colby, and I've got a bit of a cold today, so I appreciate your patience as I try not to put you to sleep with my even more resonant voice than usual, I suppose. I don't know. Hopefully I can get through this without killing my editor with 5 million throat clearings. Right, so let's talk about smiting. In 5e, one of the best and easiest ways to do burst or nova damage, I'm talking a ton of damage in a single round with the intent to blow resources in order to try and take out an enemy or two early in the fight, right, was to get Divine Smite from a couple levels of Paladin or more, find ways to get lots of spell slots and just smite several times on a turn, adding lots of damage to every weapon attack and blowing stuff up. It was fun, and it was potentially problematic. For one thing, it had a tendency to blow like most or even all of your biggest and best resources, your spell slots, right? Leaving you without a lot to use for the rest of the adventuring day. More problematic, I think, was that it tended to make combat encounters really difficult to balance for DMs. If, as a DM, you have a boss that can potentially be killed in a single round by a Sorkadin with extra attack and action surge, they might single-handedly take the steam out of your encounter, forcing you to either fudge numbers, add more enemies, double boss hit points, or let that player just kind of single-handedly win, potentially taking some fun out of the big climactic combat encounter for other players at the table that now feel a little superfluous, right? I think this is the main reason that Wizards of the Coast seem to have wanted to really nerf burst damage for the 2024 rules. Doing so tends to make combat encounters a lot easier to balance and helps ensure that everyone at the table gets to participate in a fight and contribute to feeling awesome and epic. And so we see things like no casting 2 spell-slotted spells with action surge, no extra attack on the first round of combat for Gloomstalkers, no auto crits for assassin rogues, and yes, no smiting more than once per round for paladins. And I get it. I don't disagree with what Wizards has tried to do here. I think it probably is healthy for the game to reduce the crazy levels of burst damage that characters could get up to under 2014 5e rules, at most tables at least. And yet, doing burst damage is still really fun, and I think should be a viable tactic in encounters. Last week, I was in Toronto hanging out with my friends, Monty and Kelly, the Dungeon Dudes. We went live and we talked about a ton of stuff. Check out the video there if you didn't see it. It was a lot of fun. But one of my favorite moments was our conversation around how burst damage had changed in 2024. Monty said something really interesting, I think, and it was that he thought burst damage should be something that could maybe like one-shot a normal monster, but not a boss. And that if you didn't bring out some burst damage on a boss, that you were probably going to die. I think I might agree with that take. But did they go too far with the Paladin and Divine Smite for 2024? I don't think they were wrong to limit Paladin smiting to only once per round. But if I'm being honest, I think, yeah, they might have gone a little too far with the nerf bat here. Because under the existing rules, not only can Pallies only smite once per turn, but doing so actually causes us to use our bonus action, and we are now casting a spell, right? This means that, for example, Raging Barbarians can't use Divine Smite now if they were to multi-class, right? And that Divine Smite can be counterspelled, among other things. I'm actually less upset that smiting requires us to cast a spell now than I am about the fact that we have to use a bonus action. Because as I kind of went into in my 2024 Vengeance Paladin build a few months ago, the problem here is that if you have a way to do damage with your bonus action, maybe because you're dual wielding or because you have the Polearm Master feat or something, well, now you have to choose. Do I smite Or do I do the other thing that does damage? And do I really want to spend a spell slot to do a little more damage when I could just do some damage for free, right? Is it really worth it? But you know what makes it feel kind of even worse? The Warlock Smite. Eldritch Smite. It got no nerfs. Now, I get it. It's not as easy to get Eldritch Smite. You need to take a Pact of the Blade as an invocation and give up another invocation to get Eldritch Smite, and it requires 5 levels in Warlock and requires you to use a Warlock spell specifically, not any old spell slot. But it still does the same amount of damage as Divine Smite. It still automatically knocks the enemy prone if you hit with it, something Divine Smite has never done and still doesn't, though you could use, other Paladin Smite spells to get additional effects if you want, but usually at the cost of some damage. And most damningly, I think, Eldritch Smite still doesn't require a bonus action or have you casting a spell that could be countered. Not to mention that Warlock's spell slot progression is faster than Paladin's for better damage scaling on it. So Eldritch Smite was already better than Divine Smite in some ways in 2014. Now it just kind of feels like it's flat out better in every way, meaning that one of the defining class features of the Paladin, the Smite, is just straight up better on a different class. And that feels a little crappy, I think. But here's the good news. There's nothing in the rules that says you can't use both Eldritch Smite and Divine Smite at the same time. And given that burst damage is still both fun and a sound tactical strategy, could we build an effective character who made the best use possible of them both? You'd still only be able to do each of them once per turn, but would building around a double Smiter be worth it? Would the burst damage be impressive at all? That is what we're going to explore today in D&D episode number 195, the double Smiter, Smite times 2, Smite squared. The unholy Smiter, the profane Smiter,
the sinner and the saint,
the boom boom,
the double boom, twice smitten, once dead. Thanks, as always, to everybody on the Discord server for the fantastic suggestions. I think I'm just going to keep it boring and go with the ultimate Smiter. I know it's boring, but come on. I tried to get creative with the Mantis of Mercy a couple weeks ago, and it performed worse than any video I've done in a long time. Maybe people just don't like monks or insects, perhaps. I don't know. Anyways, we're keeping it boring today. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he created for the build today. He does this every week. I love what he does. If you want to follow him on social media to check out the other stuff that he creates, or to potentially reach out and see if you could commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But first, everybody, I'm really excited to have Roll for Combat back as a sponsor today because they've got an incredible project in Kickstarter right now. In fact, at the time of this video's release, there's only 2 days left before the Kickstarter ends. I just checked. They've already destroyed their funding goal. No surprise there. They always do. And this one is called Battlezoo Ancestry's Year of the Titans, and it is going to make a fantastic holiday gift for the gamer in your life. Those of you familiar with Battlezoo products already know how this works, but for everybody else, here's the deal. You go back the project, and then every single month for the entire year of 2025, you're going to get a new playable species or ancestry that you can use as a player for your characters or as a DM for your NPCs. You'll actually even get 2 in January. These are all compatible with both D&D 5e, 2014 and 2024 rules, and Pathfinder 2e. They will include subspecies as well, along with 18 pages of extensive lore, ancestral feats, new backgrounds, and more. You want to play a troll? How about a red cap, a kind of a gnomish, bloodthirsty fae? A cyclops? Ooh, how about a kraken? We should do one of those for Kraken Week next year. Or maybe, my favorite of all, you could play as a living spell. Yeah, that's right. You can be a fireball in-game and level up and unlock greater potential and power as you do. Crazy, awesome, fun. Wow, apparently my dog agrees. Backers not only get a PDF each month of the new species or ancestry, but depending on what level you back the project at, you can get animated VTT assets, gorgeous custom maps. There is just so much here. Oh, also, I love this. All supporters get access to the Discord server where you can ask questions directly from the authors of each species if you need help with the rules about them, etc. So seriously, do not delay here. Time is limited and you want to help them reach their next stretch goal. They're so close. And yeah, this is such a great idea for a holiday present. A new playable species every month for a year. That's the gift that keeps on giving, Clark. So please click on the link that I've got in the video description and the pinned comment so that they know I sent you, and enjoy all of those titanic characters you will be filling your game with. Big thanks to Roll for Combat. Really appreciate you guys, and let's jump into the build. All right, at level 1 for our starting class, I think we ought to start Paladin here. Mechanically, at least. If we're gonna take Paladin levels anyway, I say we start Pally so that we can have heavy armor proficiency if we want it. This is going to delay extra attack and Eldritch Smite by a bit, unfortunately, but it will be a lot better for our character survivability. As for our species, okay, I'm gonna be honest. With as difficult as doing burst damage is in 2024, I think it's hard to go with any race other than Bugbear a lot of the time. I'm not saying you have to. If you can't or don't want to use pre-2024 species, feel free to take a Fire Giant Goliath here to give you less burst damage capabilities. But yeah, I mean, the Bugbear's surprise attack feature gives them an extra 2d6 damage on every attack they land in the first round of combat, which is typically when we want to be bursting anyways, right? The quicker we can eliminate an enemy, the better off our party will be. And the Fire Giant Goliath's 1d10 of damage, proficiency bonus times per day, but no more than once on a turn is just less burst capacity. But go that route if you want, sure. Or if you can use older content but don't want to be a Bugbear, going Elf isn't a bad idea. It will get you access to Elven accuracy, which will mean that we will hit and crit more often. And if you're potentially looking to wait to smite until you get a critical hit, it can be a nice way to do that more often, right? On average, the damage that we do during a Nova round of our choosing, right, say on round 1, just looks a little bit better with the Bugbear's surprise attack than the increase to hit and crit chance from Elven accuracy does. But the numbers are very close, depending on the enemy AC, depending on your level, so yeah, feel free to go that route. As for our background, once more, I'm going to really pressure you here to take an old or custom background if you can, because none of the 2024 Player's Handbook ones give me both the ability score increases and the origin feat that I want. If you can't do this, I would maybe go Merchant, because the origin feat that I want, well, okay, I'll suggest 2, actually. Lucky or Magic Initiate Wizard. Lucky is great because it'll give us advantage on any D20 roll when we decide that we want it, proficiency bonus times per day, and just straight up giving it to yourself when you're gonna try and go Nova is really nice. The other suggestion though, Magic Initiate Wizard, would be great because it would get us a couple of nice cantrips, and then yes, either find Familiar to also potentially get advantage on one attack, or the shield spell for defensive purposes if we end up getting our own Familiar via Pact of the Chain later, which we could. I prefer Lucky since the advantage, though limited in use, is on demand, and sometimes your Familiar might die, or you might not be able to use it to just give yourself advantage on your first attack, when you want at your table, if you've got a really strict rules as written DM, right? But I mean, hey, Shield is a great spell that Warlocks and Paladins don't get access to, so yeah, the feat is a great option either way. I'll assume that we go Lucky just because I want to make sure we have advantage on that first attack during our Nova round. As for our ability scores, I'm going to say let's start with a 15 Strength and take a +2 there, a 14 Constitution, and then a 15 Charisma and a +1 there. And this kind of highlights why I think heavy armor proficiency from starting Paladin is so important. Because see, even though, yes, Pact of the Blade exists, and we will be getting it, since we need at least a 13 Strength to multi-class with Paladin anyways, and the first general feat that we're going to be taking will bump our Strength, not our Charisma, it just makes a lot more sense to make this a Strength-based character. Unless, I guess, we're starting the character at high level. And if we want the best Charisma and Constitution that we can get after prioritizing Strength, that wouldn't leave us much for Dexterity, meaning that even if we had medium armor, our AC would be kind of crap. We could lower our Constitution or our Charisma so that we could get our Dexterity to 14, so that we could get a +2 to our medium armor class, right? But Constitution and Charisma are way more important to this build than Dexterity, and besides, going that route, we'd still not have quite as good an AC as we eventually can with plate armor, right? Okay, as for our starting equipment, I'm going to say yes, let's grab some chainmail and then either a greatsword or a maul. Yeah, we are going heavy weapon smiter here to get the most damage possible out of our Nova rounds. Greatswords and mauls do the best damage on average, 2d6, but the great axe's 1d12 is only slightly less, so that's a fine choice as well if you really want an axe. As a Pally 1 though, we get first up Lay on Hands, which gives us 5 Lay on Hands points per Paladin level that we can spend with a touch and a bonus action now. Nice. to heal 1 hit point per lay on hands point spent, or yes, we can spend 5 points to remove the poisoned condition. And then we get weapon masteries now, which is awesome. We get 2 weapon masteries, we can swap them out with a long rest, and of course, you're going to want to get mastery in the weapon that you've decided to use. Greatsword gives us Graze, which will let us do our ability score modifier in damage, even if we miss, and I love that. But the Maul gets Topple, which lets us potentially knock an enemy prone, thus giving us and other melee allies potentially advantage on our subsequent attacks against that target. Both are nice. The Great Axe would give us Cleave, which would let us do a lower damage attack against an adjacent enemy. That can be cool. All are kind of situationally superior to each other, so take the 2 that you like best and swap one out with a long rest if you get a different cool weapon that you want to start using, right? I'm not going to really take those masteries into account when I'm crunching numbers. I'm already going to assume that we have advantage on our attack, so Topple doesn't do much for us, and as for Graze, our hit chance is going to be so good that we're going to miss very infrequently during our Nova round. And so the damage increase that we get from it is very minuscule. We also get spells at Pally 1 now. I love that. And, I think I'd prioritize Bless for concentration. In fact, I might actually use Bless for my concentration for most of this character's career, if I'm being honest. And in that way, we might be a burst damage dealer first and a kind of backup support and minor sustained damage dealer second. Since we'll get a lot out of going Nova right on round 1 thanks to the Bugbear's surprise attack, and we'll need our bonus action to use Divine Smite eventually, we're not going to worry too much about buffing ourselves before going Nova. So I'd say unless someone else in your party is planning on using it, let's plan on going Nova on round 1, then on round 2 casting Bless to give our team an extra d4 on all of their attacks and saves. Unless we can somehow manage to get Bless off before combat starts, that is, which I won't assume we can do. Bless is still one of the best buffs in game, and since it only takes a first level spell slot, we can use our Paladin spell slots for it, leaving our better Warlock spell slots available for smiting when we burst. Other than that, I'd say grab Divine Favor. If you've got a long fight coming up, it'll give us an extra d4 of damage on all of our attacks, and to the dismay of rangers everywhere, still doesn't require a bonus action to transfer and no longer requires concentration. Since we typically wouldn't be able to get it going until round 2 though, round 3 if we're casting Bless on round 2, we'd probably only use that spell rarely if ever, right? Maybe unless someone else in our party were already casting Bless. Cure Wounds is a good spell to have as well for additional healing power, especially if we are out of lay on hands points. Hey everybody, coming to you live from the editing room. So I realized after I had recorded the video that I forgot a very important thing to include when talking about spells at Paladin level 1 here, and that is Divine Smite. When I was putting the build together, I think in my head I was still stuck in 2014 rules a little bit where we didn't get Paladin spellcasting until Paladin level 2, right? And that might have been partly triggered by the fact that we don't get the Paladin feature, Paladin Smite, until Paladin 2. But of course, since we get spells at Pally 1 now, we could take Divine Smite as a level 1 Paladin spell. We don't need to wait for the Paladin Smite feature at Paladin 2 in order to take Divine Smite. So not only did I fail to mention that here at this part of the video, but more damningly, I didn't even put it into my calculations when I did the first damage report, which you'll see coming up. In my head, I was thinking go Pally 1, then beeline to Warlock 5 so that we can get extra attack and Eldritch Smite, right? And so you're going to see me talking about, well, let's use Spirit Shroud in the meantime until we can get Pally Smite. But again, this is all because I forgot that you could take Divine Smite at Paladin 1. So maybe I will just kind of cut the stuff where I'm talking about Spirit Shroud. Actually, I'm going to leave it in because it becomes relevant a little bit later. But then when it comes time for the damage report, ignore what I say about Spirit Shroud and just know we could actually double smite right at level 6, which is cool and is going to make the numbers look a little bit better at that level 6 damage report than what I report on. If you check the spreadsheet, I'm going to have the correct numbers there, and the floating text is going to reflect the accurate numbers too. Not only that, but this is actually going to end up having ramifications for the build later as well, so stay tuned. You're going to hear more from me in a few levels. Let me give a quick shout out to my channel members. You guys, Thank you so much for all that you do for me, for the channel. I really appreciate your support. I couldn't do this without you. Everybody else, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider joining the channel. There's a little button down there that says join. You click on it and it will tell you all the benefits that you can get by being a member. Access to the library of write-ups that I create for each of my builds to help you recreate it yourself a little more easily without having to take notes or rewatch the video. Access to the D4 Discord server. Even access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do, which I'm doing tomorrow actually, and I'm super excited about that. It's like my favorite day of the month. Anyways, thanks for considering, but if you can't or don't want to be a member, that's okay. Watching, liking, subscribing, clicking the notifications bell, sharing, commenting, all the things. These are also great ways to support the channel, and I appreciate you for doing any or all of them. Okay, at level 2, I think we've got to start investing heavily into Warlock. My question is, why is this character taking Warlock levels? It's a common enough multi-class pairing that you've probably heard of plenty of people doing it if you haven't done it yourself. What is your favorite reason for multi-classing Paladin and Warlock? Was your character forced or tricked into a pact? At first glance, it doesn't seem like something a Paladin would willingly do, right? But, I mean, the otherworldly being you make a pact with doesn't have to be evil. Not that you couldn't play an evil Pally if you wanted, but if you don't, maybe the otherworldly being you make a pact with was sent by the deity you worship to aid you in your quest. Maybe that deity is testing your faith by asking you to swear obedience or loyalty to this servant of theirs, this otherworldly being, in order to grant you a greater portion of their power. Not that all Pallies have to be religious with their oaths either. Maybe you want to swear an oath to vengeance or to protect nature or to the ideal of devotion, and this otherworldly being is simply an embodiment of that ideal. You figure it out, but I don't think that these two classes necessarily need to feel as contradictory to one another as a lot of people might think at first glance. Regardless of your reasons though, at level 2, we're going Warlock 1, and we now get a single invocation right away, which I love because that means we can take Pact of the Blade. And even though we're not going to be taking full advantage of it, it is really amazing now in that it lets us summon any melee weapon or bond with a magical weapon with a bonus action, and then any attacks we make with that weapon can use our charisma modifier to hit and damage, though we won't be doing that, and the weapon can deal necrotic, psychic, radiant, or its regular damage type when we hit with it. And you guys, based on what I think I know about the new monster manual, this might actually be a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. Regardless, we don't actually need Pact of the Blade at this level, so if you want to delay it until later, that's fine, and you could take a different invocation here if you wanted. We do get spells, Warlock spells at this level, of course, and I'd say that we should grab Armor of Agathis so that we can buff ourselves with temporary hit points and return cold damage to melee attackers. And yes, I know that the current wording of the rules makes it seem like you could stack temporary hit points from another source and kind of cheese Armor of Agathis now, but no, I don't think that was intended personally, and so I probably won't be building around that idea, but I'm open to changing my mind. Feel free to argue with me about it in the comments. In addition, sure, let's grab Eldritch Blast. We've got a decent charisma score. It makes a solid range damage option. And then I would also be sure to grab Booming or Green Flame Blade if you can use older content so that you can cast the spell, make a weapon attack at the same time, and then after level 5, you'll do a little extra damage to your target. Now, since we're not Valor Bards or Eldritch Knights or Blade Singers, we can't cast these spells and double them with extra attack once we've got it, right? But before we get extra attack, we may as well use our action to use these cantrips, right? Especially once we get to character level 5. But I mean, even before level 5, we might be able to take advantage of the they take more damage if they move, or you do more damage to an adjacent enemy features of Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, right? At level 3, we would be a Warlock 2, and that means we get Magical Cunning. This says that once per long rest, we can take a minute to recover half of our spent Warlock spell slots. Remember, those usually reset on a short rest, but now we can get half of them back in a pinch if we don't have time for a short rest, which is nice. And then we get 2 more invocations, and this makes me super happy. 3 invocations at Warlock level 2. I'm going to say we definitely should take Eldritch Mind, which will give us advantage on concentration checks. This makes me feel a little better about not starting with a class that has Constitution saving throw proficiency. I was tempted to start Sorcerer on this build, but since we're not really relying on a concentration spell for our Nova round, I decided not to worry about it too much, especially now. As for the second invocation, I mean, there are lots of great ones. Devil Sight to see in magical darkness, that's handy. Fiendish Vigor for free temporary hit points all the time, though we might not really need that in a minute. Otherworldly Leap for free jump spell, that's nice. Pact of the Tome for more spells, or Pact of the Chain for a familiar. But I think I'm gonna say, let's grab Agonizing Blast. Remember, it's not just for Eldritch Blast anymore. It says we can choose any Warlock cantrip that deals damage and add our Charisma modifier to that specific spell's damage rolls. So, sure, we could choose Eldritch Blast, but couldn't we also choose Booming Blade, for example? Some might say that doesn't work because at this level at least, the spell itself isn't necessarily doing any damage. It's the attack we make as part of the casting of the spell that's doing damage, and that's not the same thing. But even if you try to make that argument, I think it falls apart once we hit character level 5 at least. At that point, the cantrip is definitely doing damage, right? An extra d8 on the hit, and in that case, I think I'd argue that we'd get to add our Charisma modifier as part of it. I don't know, I have a hard time reading the rules any other way, but I bet some of you have no trouble reading the rules otherwise, and that's fine. Again, let's argue about it in the comments. Regardless, I'm not going to be using it by the first damage report, so no need to lose a lot of sleep here. Just something to think about at level 5 especially, but before we have extra attack, that's all. At level 4, we would be a Warlock 3, and that means we get our Warlock subclass. What do you think I'm gonna take here? If you said Fiend, you win. Okay, maybe we are relegated to being tricked or forced into this pact, like Will in Baldur's Gate 3. Because otherwise, how could a non-evil paladin make a pact with a fiend? Well, hey, let's get creative here. Maybe you've met a fiend who is looking to escape hell and redeem themselves. Maybe they're trying to change their ways and are looking to you to help them, teach them even, in exchange for giving you some of their power. Why not? And you definitely don't have to take Fiend here. It's not really that necessary to the build, at least not until later. It's definitely my favorite for this build, but any other subclass would work fine. Celestial might be the easiest to justify as a paladin and would give you some nice additional support and healing potential. Archfey is a ton of fun, and Great Old One might be the new, most powerful option, honestly, at least for single target sustained damage. But yeah, I like Fiend here for a few reasons, the best of which we're not going to see until the very end of the build. But at this level, at level 3, I like it for the Dark One's Blessing feature, which is vastly improved over 2014 and seems super fitting for a character who's planning on wading into melee all the time. It still gives us temporary hit points equal to our Warlock level plus our Charisma modifier, so 6 for now. But also, it works when not just we kill an enemy, but anybody kills an enemy within 10 feet of us. Very nice. We should be getting a lot of temporary hit points from this ability. But also, I really wanted to go Fiendlock for their spell list. At this level, they get Burning Hands, Command, Scorching Ray, and Suggestion, which, that's a nice list. But at Warlock 5, we're going to get Fireball. And Warlocks don't typically get access to Fireball, and it just seems like for a character who's focused on being a burst damage dealer, it's kind of cool to have either single target or area of effect burst damage options, no? Other than that, for other second level spells to consider, Misty Step, of course, for some nice teleportation. Hold Person is great for control. Sure, you could go Darkness for the old Darkness Devil Sight trick. I'm not going to assume that we are. I really love Mirror Image now to make duplicates of ourselves that our enemies might hit instead of us. But yeah, generally, pick your favorites here. PYF. At level 5, we would be a Warlock 4, and that means we get our first general feat. And I kind of think we have to take Great Weapon Master here. You could certainly get a lower strength, focus on charisma, and get a half feat that bumps charisma instead at this level. Not worry about getting that strength so high. It's too bad Great Weapon Master doesn't give us more options for what ability score that we're bumping. But it does say that when we make an attack with a heavy weapon as part of the attack action, we can add our proficiency bonus to the damage. It's only 3 more per hit for now, but it doesn't hurt our hit chance anymore, and it scales. And for the naysayers who think that Great Weapon Master got massively nerfed, do the math. At a lot of enemy ACs, this is better than the old Great Weapon Master feat, and it only gets better as we level. Sorry to burst your bubble of anger. Actually, no, I'm not. I hate bubbles of anger. Oh, it also still gives us a bonus action attack if we crit or kill an enemy. Just remember that bonus action attack that we get from Great Weapon Master doesn't add the proficiency bonus damage from Great Weapon Master. So dumb. That actually gives me a bubble of anger. At level 6, we would be a Warlock 5, and that means we get 2 more invocations, and here we would for sure want to take Thirsting Blade, which essentially gives us extra attack, but with our Pact of the Blade weapon only, right? And then Eldritch Smite, of course, so we could, once per turn, add an extra 4d8 damage at this level to a hit with our Pact weapon, and just knock them prone if they're huge or smaller. No saving throw. One note, if you've been using Agonizing Blast up to this point, I'd probably swap that out for something else. One with the shadows might be my favorite pick, so that we could go invisible if we were in dim light or darkness without spending a spell slot. That's pretty awesome. But then we also get 3rd level Warlock spells here. And I mean, yeah, like I said, we get Fireball for free. So awesome. Also Stinking Cloud, which is nice, but probably slightly less awesome. Other than that, the usual suspects here. Counterspell and or Dispel Magic, Fly, the amazing control spells, Hypnotic Pattern and Fear. You should seriously consider using one of those to control the battlefield, right? You might still want to be concentrating on Bless. I'm going to assume for this level only, however, that we are going to use Spirit Shroud here, since it's a bonus action to cast. And I mean, we don't have Divine Smite yet, right? You don't have to, of course, but if we do, it will add a d8 of cold, radiant, or necrotic damage to each of our 2 attacks during our Nova round, and I mean during all other rounds until we lose concentration as well. So yeah, it's a great spell. It also slows enemies down by 10 feet if they start their turn within 10 feet of us. And now that we are level 6, it's time for our first damage report. So what does our Nova round of burst damage look like here? It's pretty simple. Right on round 1, we use our bonus action to cast Spirit Shroud on ourselves, then run up to our target and attack them with our big weapon, using a luck point to give ourselves advantage on the attack. If we hit, we use Eldritch Smite to do an extra 4d8 of damage and knock them prone, then make our second attack also with advantage now. You might want to wait to smite until that second attack to see if it crits, assuming the first one didn't, right? But I'm not going to assume that's what we're doing. I'm just going to say the first time we hit, we're smiting. And also, if you're going to wait to smite until that second attack, if we didn't crit on the first one, I'd say for sure use a maul instead of a greatsword so that you can at least still try to topple them if you don't use Eldritch Smite on that first hit, right? Now, doing this is a little risky. That second attack might miss, but I get the desire to hold off just in case. Regardless, if everything lands, we would be doing 2d6 for the weapon, plus 2d6 more for our Bugbear's surprise attack, plus 4 for our strength modifier, plus 3 more for our proficiency bonus, thanks to Great Weapon Master, plus 1d8 for Spirit Shroud, and that's all on both attacks, right? Plus 4d8 for Smite on our first hit, for a grand total of 8d6 plus 6d8 plus 14 damage. And so, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average here do 74 damage, and against a 15 AC, it would be 68 damage. And, well, compared to other 2024 Nova builds that I've done to date, there's only 2 of them, but I mean, versus the Assassin, it's way better, and versus the Critty Bang Bang that subtly paralyzed them, then auto crit with Scorching Ray build, right up there if you missed it, it is way, way worse. Like half the damage that Critty Bang Bang was doing. But you know, if we were comparing to the old 2014 rules, it's respectable. Middle of tier 2, I'd call it. So not the worst, and still doing really solid sustained damage, honestly, if we're concentrating on Spirit Shroud especially. Okay, let's see what it looks like once we're actually double smiting, because at level 7, now that we've got extra attack and, frankly, the better smite, it's time to get back to Paladin. But, of course, we already had Divine Smite, so we don't need to take a second level of Paladin here, and that's actually great for the build. It means we could continue Warlock, and by our level 9 damage report, we'd be a Warlock 8, Pally 1, and we could get another feat, which is going to do good things for our numbers. So I'm going to leave the conversation in here about Paladin level 2 because I think eventually we are going to want to take another level of Paladin. But just know that my intent is to change the build here so that we're going Pally 1, Warlock 8 by the time we're level 9. Because at Pally 2, we get Paladin's Smite now, which says that we always have the Divine Smite spell prepared and can cast it once per day, at first level only, of course, for free without spending a spell slot, so there's that. But yeah, there's no reason we couldn't use a Warlock spell slot to Divine Smite as well if we wanted, meaning we could now do our double smite on a hit for a total of 8d8 damage. Pretty cool, if pretty expensive. Let's see about scaling it a bit more. Oh, and I should probably mention here, what about other smite spells? Searing Smite could light them on fire, potentially doing even more total damage if they don't make their save against it. Thunderous Smite could push them or knock them prone. Wrathful Smite could frighten them, and At higher levels, the options just get even better, right? I'll say that, sure, in-game, I might opt for one of these other smite spells. It's a teeny bit less burst damage, but probably worth it for the extra stuff that you might be able to do with them. I'm building here for burst, so I'll just assume Divine Smite, but feel free to use something else if you want instead. Now, we do get a fighting style at Pally 2 here as well, and yeah, we probably take Great Weapon fighting style here so that any 1s or 2s we roll on our weapons damage only. No, I don't think this would apply to other things we add to our attacks with our two-handed weapons like smites, as much as I'd love that. I know, it works that way in Baldur's Gate 3. Take a drink. But yeah, those 1s and 2s that we roll are just automatically 3s now. It's not amazing, but it is better on a maul or a greatsword than it is on other weapons, aside from the double-bladed scimitar. A little fact I built around here, if you missed it. At level 8, though, we've got to get back to Warlock, because there are a lot of goodies available for us if we invest, including damage, yes, but also cool stuff like Dark One's Own Luck, which we get at Warlock 6 as a Fiend Lock. And this tells us that Charisma modifier times per day when you make an ability check or a saving throw. You can add a d10 to that roll after you've seen the roll but before any of the roll's effects occur. Pretty awesome. At level 9, we would be a Warlock 7, and that means we get another invocation, our 6th invocation. Lots of great ones to choose from that we've already discussed, so go ahead and PYF here, pick your favorite. We also get 4th level Warlock spells though now. Fiend Locks get Confusion and Summon Aberration for free, both situationally pretty nice. But other than that, yeah, I mean, Greater Invisibility or Shadow of Moil are great. Dimension Door, always handy, but of course, I'm assuming that we're using both of our spell slots for smiting like a moron. Hey, we've still got a couple first level Pally spell slots we can use. Don't be too sad. All right, this brings us to our next damage report at level 9. Since last check, we've picked up our 2nd smite and our Warlock spell slot level to 4th level, but other than the teeny bump from Great Weapon fighting style, it's otherwise been some nice utility and defensive benefits for us. I'm no longer going to assume that we're casting Spirit Shroud during our Nova round, since I want to save our bonus action for Divine Smite. I mean, want is a relative term here, I suppose, but I need to. Anyways, under all of the same assumptions, against a 10 armor class here, we would on average do 98 damage, almost broke the century mark there, and against a 16 AC, it would be 93 damage. And that's some decent scaling, but since we've burned up both our spell slots for it, our sustained damage will look a little worse than it did before because we don't have Spirit Shroud going. But again, we can use Bless and our allies will love us for it. Compared to other Nova builds, we're in about the same place versus 2024 and maybe more like middle of tier 3 now if comparing to old burst damage builds. So yeah, not too surprisingly, I don't think we're having a hard time keeping up with old burst damage builds. Who'd have thought? All right, let's see if it gets better. At level 10, we would be a Warlock 8. That means we get another general feat. And I'm going to say let's just bump our strength to 20 so that we can finally have it capped, which will be really the best thing that we can do for our damage at this level. At level 11, we would be a Warlock 9, and we get the new and awesome Contact Patron feature now, which says that we always have the Contact Other Plane spell prepared, and that once per day we can cast it specifically to contact our patron, and when we do so, we auto-succeed on the saving throw, which is just some really cool utility, and maybe more importantly, awesome roleplay and story moments, right? To let us incorporate our patron into the game more, which I love. And then we get 5th level spells and 5th level spell slots. Fiend Locks get Gesh and Insect Plague for free, but aside from those ones, maybe let me just mention Hold Monster here as something to seriously consider. Hold Monster will paralyze any enemy who fails their saving throw against it, and paralyzed enemies get auto-critted, right? So maybe we should start to use this for our concentration. Maybe we cast it on round 1 and then on round 2 go Nova. It's not a bad idea. We'd give up the bonus damage from surprise attack, but hey, maybe you're not playing a bugbear anyways. Arguably, what might be even better would be to take 2 levels of Sorcerer from this point to get the subtle spell Meta Magic so that we could cast Hold Monster before combat breaks out and then really blow up enemies with our auto crits and smites and doubled surprise attack damage, right? I mean, yeah, sure, you could totally do that, and I would seriously consider it. I feel like I kind of explored that idea already with the Critty Bang Bang build that I linked to earlier, so if you want to give it a try, go for it. We would only have the spell slot for 1 smite in that case, though, at least until we hit Warlock 11, and that just kind of, I don't know, that feels both redundant and goes against what I set out to do with the build in the first place, I think I'll stay the course with my double Smiter and just mention the hold monster move as an option. The Nova damage would look better, though it would be dependent on an enemy failing their save against hold monster, right? Okay, anyways, we get our 7th invocation at this level too, and I mean, I guess we kind of have to take Life Drinker if we're prioritizing damage overall, but it's way worse in 2024. Now it just adds a d6 of damage once per turn when we hit with our packed weapon, and also lets us spend one of our hit dice and recover hit points like we would during a short rest. I guess coupling a little survivability with the damage is cool. It's just kind of crappy damage. Oh well. Okay. Last blurb from the editing room. I'm about to tell you that at level 12, we should go Paladin 3 so that we get our subclass. And that's cool, but since we have only taken one level of Paladin thus far, I think it would be better for us to stay Warlock here so that by level 13 we'd be a Warlock 12, Paladin 1. Because Warlock 12 gets us Devouring Blade, and that's a really big deal, a big nice damage increase for us. Again, I'm going to leave the conversation in about Paladin level 3 here because I do think that after we hit Warlock 12, or maybe after we hit Warlock 14, I would want to take a couple more levels of Pally because I do love the idea of getting a Paladin subclass here. I would just delay it and do it in a little bit different order. So if you check the video description, in case you're confused, I will put what I think the actual optimal build would be, like when we take Paladin levels, at what level, etc. And again, I'll have the correct damage numbers in the floating text and in the graphs and spreadsheets, okay? Cool, thank you. But at level 12, now that we've maxed our Warlock spell slots out, remember they don't go above 5th level. After this, it's just Mystic Arcanum, right? And we can't use those to smite with. I mean, as much as I want to get to Devouring Blade and that sweet 3rd attack, since I took 2 levels of Pally, just 1 more level of Pally would get us our subclass, and that would do some nice things for our damage, so let's do it, making us a Paladin 3 here. And for our subclass, then we would want to take Oath of Devotion. Now hang on a sec. A Pact of the Fiend Warlock who's sworn an oath to devotion? How? Why? Their tenets are let your word be your promise, protect the weak and never fear to act, and let your honorable deeds be an example. On a Pact of the Fiend Warlock. Come on. Again, I think we can do it. Maybe we're trying to resist the pull of the evil influence of our patron, and there's kind of this war going on inside of us as we're compelled to do as they ask on one hand, but are striving to be honorable and honest on the other. I like that dichotomy in a character. Or again, maybe we're trying to show our fiend who's looking for redemption a better path. Maybe we swear this oath together. I think there's a lot of fun and character and story potential here if you get creative with it. But also as a Pally 3, we get Channel Divinity. We can use Channel Divinity twice per day, recovering 1 use per short rest, to either use Divine Sense, which lets us detect fiends and undead and celestials, which I generally advise against doing, really. Or we can use Channel Divinity for the freaking amazing and improved Sacred Weapon now as a Devotion Pally, which says that when we take the attack action, we can just decide to imbue our melee weapon so that for the next 10 minutes, we can add our Charisma modifier to the attack rolls that we make with it. That is so awesome. And it makes me sad that we were not doing a Charisma first build. I really want to do a mostly Devotion Pally build for sustained damage that just takes a Pact of the Blade dip, and then they would be Charisma sad, right? But that'll just stay on my to-do list for now. I was just really curious to know what burst damage can look like if we tried to maximize smiting, and I had to answer that question first. So here we are. Anyways, this is going to give us a nice +3 to hit, and that will be fantastic, especially against those higher enemy armor classes. We also get Oath spells here, and Devotion Pallies get Protection from Evil and Good, and Shield of Faith. Those aren't bad if we wanted to use our concentration for defensive purposes instead of Bless or something else, right? But then at level 13, yeah, we gotta go back to Warlock. There are too many good things in our future to spend any more time in the Pally world, I think. Thus, as a Fiend Warlock 10, we would get Fiendish Resilience, which says that whenever we finish a short or long rest, we can pick a damage type other than Force and just have resistance to it. Nice. Pick your favorite. Let it depend on where you are and what you're fighting. If you don't know what else to pick, I'd probably go Bludgeoning. That's the most common damage type in the 2014 Monster Manual, at least, I think. Okay. At level 13, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have capped our strength at 20, capped our Warlock spell slots at 5th level, picked up that sweet Sacred Weapon feature for an incredible hit chance bump, gained a little bump from Life Drinker, as well as some nice utility and potential control options. And so, on our Nova round against an enemy with a 10 armor class, now we would do 116 damage on average, and against a 17 AC it would be 115 damage. Barely less, right? Man, that plus 13 to hit that we have now, plus advantage, looks amazing against higher enemy ACs. But we're not scaling like mad or anything here. That critty bang bang build just keeps putting distance between themselves and us. And we're more like middle of tier 4 compared to old 2014 Nova builds. Not that 115 damage in a turn is anything to scoff at, but that straight-classed Blade Lock that I did a few months ago, who didn't need to worry about multiclassing to pick up Divine Smite and thus had their 3rd attack by this damage report, right? They were almost doing as much damage every round as we are doing burst damage here. And that hurts a little bit. So, I mean, we have some things going for us that they don't. We've got better support and defense. It's not just about damage, right? I know that. Not all of you know that I know that, but I do know that. Anyways, let's see what it looks like as we come down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a Warlock 11, and that means we get Mystic Arcanum, a 6th level Mystic Arcanum. This gives us a 6th level spell, but one that we can only use once per day. There's no accompanying spell slot for it, right? And I'm just going to say PYF here. There are lots of really good ones to choose from, but nothing that's going to increase our burst damage, I don't think. But also, don't forget, at this level, we get a 3rd spell slot. 3 5th level spell slots per short rest. That's kind of awesome. So, sure, if you can somehow get Spirit Shroud going before combat starts, you could still double smite on round 1 and do an extra 4d8 of damage, right? Since Spirit Shroud damage scales to 2d8 per hit as a 5th level spell slot. Worth trying once in a while, perhaps, if you can catch an enemy monologuing or something. At level 15, we would be a Warlock 12. That means we get another feat, and I say let's bump Charisma to 18 here. It's good for a lot of Warlocky things, including our spell save DC, and it even improves our hit chance now, so yeah, let's do it. Feel free to, take Resilient Wisdom or Resilient Constitution if you want, or maybe Heavy Armor Master or any other host of good options that might help you survive longer or have more utility. We do get an 8th invocation here, and that's the real beauty of Warlock 12, right? Because that means we can take Devouring Blade finally, which gives us 3 attacks with our packed weapon when we take the attack action, and that's simply amazing. Fighters no longer have a monopoly on extra attack. At level 16, we would be a Warlock 13, and that means we get a 7th level Mystic Arcanum, and again, you should pick your favorite. Probably Force Cage, but it's not the no-brainer that it used to be. It's still really good control, though. It's just expensive control and requires our concentration now, which it didn't used to. But then finally, at level 17, we would be a Warlock 14, and this gets us to the real reason that I wanted to go Fiendlock in the first place.
Hurl Through Hell.
I don't think I've ever used this ability on a build before. In fact, let me check my table of contents, which I post in the video description of every single one of my builds to confirm that. Yeah. The only time I've ever used Fiendlock on a build before was on the Thornlock build. Am I out of cards? I might be out of cards. If I am, this is what the thumbnail looks like. That was such a long time ago. Man, I loved that build. So quirky, so good. One of my favorites. Anyways, what a shame that we have never gotten to Fiendlock 14, right? It's such an iconic ability, Hurl Through Hell, and it's especially a shame because the feature is a lot worse now. You can use it more than once per day now, so that's cool, but otherwise it's worse. It's still cool, it's still good. It says that when we hit an enemy with an attack, check, please, then we can try to hurl them through hell, doing 8d10 psychic damage to them if they aren't a fiend, and if they fail a charisma save. And if they do, they're also incapacitated until the end of our next turn when they return to where they were when we smote them. So yeah, solid single target, single round control, and burst damage, but it used to be 10d10 damage and no save. Holy crap. So yeah, maybe it was too good. And now we can spend a spell slot to do it again if we want. I just really wish that it did half damage on a save. And like no banishment or incapacitation if they made the save right, but just half damage. At least give me half damage. That's all. Anyways, at level 17, it's time for our final damage report. Since last check, we have improved our hit chance with a better charisma, added a third attack per turn, and picked up Hurl Through Hell. And that's awesome. But you know what the real kick in the shorts is? Now that we have that third attack, if we used our bonus action to cast Spirit Shroud instead of Divine Smite, it would add 6d8 damage to our Nova round, and that's the same amount of damage that we're getting from Divine Smite, except Spirit Shroud would do that much damage on all of our turns for the entire combat encounter until we lost concentration. And yeah, sure, it requires concentration and maybe you want to concentrate on something else, but it still makes me mad. Anyways, what should we assume is the percent chance we have to succeed on sending our enemies to hell and back? We've got an 18 DC and most enemies have a crap charisma save, right? Though higher CR enemies tend to have a much better charisma save than lower CR enemies, and legendary saves exist. So what, 50%? 60%? Let's say 60%. Under those assumptions then, at this level, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 171 damage during our Nova round, and against an 18 AC, it would be 171 damage during our Nova round, like virtually no drop. And that honestly might be my favorite thing about this build. Man, I love that Devotion Pally Channel Divinity. But okay, how does it compare to other burst damage builds that I've done to date? At this level versus 2024 builds, same as before. In fact, the Assassin almost caught up to us here. Versus 2014 builds, it's kinda middle of tier 4 still. Thank goodness for Hurl Through Hell, or we wouldn't have even gotten that high. So, okay. There's a lot of things to talk about with some final thoughts here. The tier score for this build, if we were to just average the damage that they did against every armor class that we calculate for, against each of the 4 damage reports, average it all into one big number, we end up with a 106, which is better than the Assassin, but almost half of the critty bang bang. And 106 would put us in like the bottom half of tier 3 compared to old Nova builds. So, does that mean that this is a total failure? I don't think so, no. I mean, let's think it through here. They do decent, if not amazing, burst damage. And, I mean, maybe that's where Wizards of the Coast wants burst damage to be right now, right? Maybe that is better for the game. I kind of think it is. On top of that, their sustained damage is actually pretty decent, especially if we can throw on something to buff our attacks, like a Divine Favor, or a Spirit Shroud, or if we're using our Pally's Channel Divinity. I mean, even Bless is going to help, right? But if we're not doing anything to buff ourselves, we will make a solid controller after we burst with like Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, Force Cage, or heck, a solid like secondary support with Bless and with some healing. We're a lot more durable than that first Pact of the Blade Warlock I did with our heavy armor and lots of temporary hit points. I really do think this is a solid, pretty well-rounded build. So no, it's not the fact that their burst damage isn't off the charts that makes me a little upset about where this build ended up, if I'm being honest. I think it all comes down to my annoyance with Divine Smite taking a bonus action, really. I've said this before on the channel, and Monty said something similar on our live Q&A that I linked to earlier. I wish they would have given Divine Smite the same treatment that they gave the Rogue's Sneak Attack for 2024. Let you do it no more than once per turn, fine, still with a spell slot, and then do either full damage or, for a little less damage, do a Thunderous Smite or a Searing Smite, etc. And then increase the options that you can do for smiting as you gain paladin levels, all the way up to banishing smite. But don't make it cost a bonus action to use, and don't call it casting a spell. It removes the problem of, OMG, I have 50 spell slots and 12 attacks, and I smite with every hit for 5 billion damage, that I myself have been guilty of building in the past, I will admit. Maybe I'm part of the problem, maybe I'm part of the reason it got nerfed. And that's probably giving myself more credit than I deserve. But had they done something like that, it would still keep smiting fun and interesting, and it wouldn't force us to make a choice that just feels like kind of bad if we do, bad if we don't, you know? If I were a DM, this is honestly how I would homebrew Divine Smite at my table. Doesn't cost a bonus action to use, and it's not considered casting a spell, but you can still only do it or one of your other smite options once on a turn. I'm not saying that you have to do that. In the end, if I were to play this build in-game, strictly rules as written, I think I'd probably play it more like a smite only if I crit build, and not so much a go ham right on round 1 build. And then in that case, sure, maybe I would have gone elf and picked up elven accuracy and then focused on making sure I got advantage consistently. Or, maybe better yet, beeline to Warlock 9, then grab a couple levels of Sorcerer so that you can subtle spell hold monster, right? Then, if you're still playing after that, post level 11, take a couple Paladin levels and double auto crit smite them to Kingdom Come. As is, the bonus action cost for Divine Smite just makes it feel all but dead to me, if I'm being honest. And it kind of makes me not want to try building around it anymore. And that is ultimately what makes me feel kind of sad looking back on this build. Not because it's not good, not because it doesn't have potential, but because it could be so much better without being overpowered or problematic, I think. But hey, maybe, if nothing else, this video will inspire you or your DM to homebrew Divine Smite to make it better. Or maybe you'll play it as I've laid it out and realize that it's more fun than I'm pretending it is. I really enjoyed putting the build together, truly, regardless, if for no other reason than because I feel like I know what I need to know now, and that brings me satisfaction. And yeah, I do think it'd still be a great build to play in game. So if you can, try it out, and please report back to me so I know. But regardless, that's the build for the week, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you know that I love you, because I do. You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for all that you do for me, for the channel. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great week, and if you don't, please don't give up. Hang in there. You got this. I hope that you will do good, and be kind, and stay safe, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. And it's cool, that's what I tell them, no rules, unbreakable heaven, but ooh, oh, oh. It's a cruel summer with you. I'm drunk in the back of the car, and I'm crying like a baby coming home from the bar. Oh, I said I'm fine, but it wasn't true. I don't want to keep secrets just to keep you, and I snuck in the garden gate. Okay, listen. I'm not the world's biggest Taylor Swift fan. But, as some of you know, because you may have watched the live Q&A that I did with Monty and Kelly, I actually, when I was in Toronto last week to hang out with them, I was also there to take my girls to the Taylor Swift concert. And I'm just going to say this. Regardless of what you think about her music or even her personality or her ethics or whatever, there's something awesome about being a girl dad. Come on, girl dad, certified. And just like being witness to your daughters witnessing a woman just owning the world in all of her power and glory, and just being powerful and vulnerable and unapologetic. And I mean, that was awesome. It was awesome. And, sitting there with 50,000 other mostly girls just standing and screaming and cheering and laughing and exulting and just having the time of their lives. It was an amazing experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So, I wish it was more affordable. Almost had to take out a second mortgage on my home, but it was worth it. So, anyways, that's what I'll say about Taylor Swift. Hair's kind of wet still. Just got out of the shower. Should I just go with the wet hair look, or should I wait for it to dry? I don't have time. I'm just gonna have wet hair today, I guess. Maybe I can. Yeah, that's about it. All right. As I not say anything that my son can use against me in the outtakes. You know who I'd like to lay my hands on. Wait, no, don't. I can't say that. I'm gonna get in trouble. Okay. Okay. One note. Something.